我要死的。
And notice my microphone was up there, meaning it's going to be muted. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Josh, is it easy to set up the microphone? Has it been easy to use and everything?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've gone through. I've had a microphone like this for a long time, so I've gone through like 4 different arms. One the boom arm. I've got the what is it? The Elgato mini arm, so it's a low profile, so it just swings over here, and then it's completely out of my way, and then I just swing it over, and it's fine.
Yeah, Jimmy used to have one too. Like, I wonder if it's like cloud advocate thing, like because
Yeah, well, we do a lot of video conferencing, and so audio quality is somewhat important. So we all have those. But I
yeah.
before I joined Advocacy, I ran a couple podcasts. I was a guest on a lot of podcasts.
Mm,
So that's
yeah.
that's why I bought it.
Has that studio look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I've done some Pluralsight courses too. So I think I've
Ah,
done 5. A couple. The latest one was like with Go, but then before then I did some PowerShell and some. I even did one on regular expression that's been archived. All that knowledge is long gone, so don't ask me to do regular expressions.
I'm
But
sure if as
yeah,
soon as we ask you a question, they'll come back.
maybe. I still have the code repo that I use for it, and I still reference it, especially for lookbacks and look aheads.
Mm,
That I can never really commit to memory,
yep.
but
Okay,
yep.
I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Um, yeah. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Sure can.
Thanks, Josh. Um, yeah, previously we said we will skip our PRs and we'll talk about each individual items that requires discussion under agenda. Um, so feel free to add to the agenda as we go. But the first one today is running through the proposal for the OCI store cache worker. So let me pull it up. Junchen, are you ready to go through that today? We also have a cache on the call.
Yeah,
Looks like
sure.
Junchen. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Would you like me to make you the host so you can have control of the presentation?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I can share my screen. Sure.
Yes, let me do that. Make host.
Okay, let's see. Let me share. Screen number 1. This one. Okay. Can you let me know if you can see the screen? Let's see.
Yep, not yet. It
Oh,
takes a little while. Do you see like a little green highlighted
yeah, it's different from
box?
the sharing.
Definitely. Junchen, is this screen share coming through?
Oh, uh, I'm not sure. What does it look like from your side? I see the green square
Okay,
over
and is there like a
already.
share button? You may need to click additional buttons because I
Oh,
don't see anything on the screen yet.
let me see. Oh, yeah.
Yep,
Well, how
now
about
now I
now?
can see.
Cool.
Yes.
So I have, yeah, like updates the PR according to comments. I haven't fully resolved them yet, but
Yeah, would you like to talk about the problem to give some context?
Sure. Let me open this one so this we can see it from local. This problem actually is regarding to the issue 1110, and when we have our auras refer store failed to initialize for external verifiers. Uh, this occurs when the multiple verifiers executed for the same subject in parallel and happens to our end-to-end test. Here is a log. As we can see, even the notation and I think the SBOM is working. As the cosine SBOM is failing, as here, creating store from input configuration failed. But following our design, it should not fail for the initialize only create an empty index.json file. Yeah, so we have to resolve this race condition issue.
Yeah.
Here is my
Chincheng, would you be able to zoom in a little bit? The text is a
um,
bit small.
oh sure. Let's see. I can close all these. Um,
I'd not really used it in Visual Studio Code. Would if you go back to the browser, if you pull up the preview of the design doc, for the
um,
browser, you should be able to do Control++, and it should zoom in.
oh sure. Just I wanted to share an image which is not showing properly on the browser like this one. It's
Oh,
a
I
little bit
see, I see.
bigger. Yeah. So probably I will stay here for a while and then I can switch
Yeah.
back to the browser. Like a quick glance at
Ah,
the proposal solution. It's not big. Let me see. How about this? Is it
oh,
big?
yes, a lot better. Yeah. Josh says Control++ works in VS Code as well. So
So the proposed solution is remove our push operation who's targeting the OCI store from our verifier or like any other verifier progress or any built-in verifier. Uh, Instead, we can resolve OCI store race condition in multi-verify. Uh, uh, Instead, we can do it on a separate plugin to resolve this race condition in multi-verified scenarios. And meanwhile, we can use the shared memory to implement a queue for Aura's push to manage the Aura's concurrency tasks. Two user scenarios are covered, both as we mentioned previously, multi-verifier and the reuse of our OCI artifacts, which is the cache. And here is the original data flow. We have our ORS fetch and OCI blob store. All these components are inside the verifier. When we have multi-verifier, there will be a conflict when trying right into the OCI blob store because it's pointing to the same file system. And by doing this one is my new design. We can implement two layers. The first one is the verify store worker, which exactly do the same thing as what we had previously, but instead write into the OCI store cache, which is based on OCI layout and dependent on the file system. It write into a memory-based store, so there won't be conflict in the first place in between these verifiers. And since we need cache to save the download time, we will create a task in the queue in which asynchronously write into asynchronously write into our OCI store on the file system. Yeah, so far, do we have any like questions or like clarify on logic if it's not clear. No, then oh, I see Pimmy unmute.
So what's the difference between the current workflow and the proposed workflow? Can you do a comparison between the two like diagrams?
Oh, sure. Let me
Okay.
make it smaller. Let's see. Ah, it's always so weird. See if I can just open them. Two different views. This one is the previous one, and then this one is new one. So comparing to the original verifier, we have a separate plugin. We call it cache store worker to handle the cache job.
Is it more like a component than a plugin, Juncheng?
The reason I give it name it plugin here is I want it isolated from the previously store definition. It should be independent to the verifier and independent to the our store. So if we have any customized verifier or some external cost notation is an internal verifier. So if we have any other verifiers, they can and they want to use the Aura store, they can also access this newly designed plugin cache store worker to share the OCI store cache. Oh, I see Akash has raised his hand.
Yeah, thanks, Jincheng, for taking this issue up. So first question I have is, could you explain a little bit on why the two-tiered cache is necessary, and why the memory store specifically per process is going to help in this scenario?
Okay, sure. So the first thing is why we need a memory-based store. We implement I have this memory-based store for the we can take the memory-based store as a single store used for the verifier, and it will get recycled once the blob content or the manifest is received, and then the memory-based store is gone. So to make sure in scenarios that cache was not hit, we have a target place to store our OCR artifacts, which is required by ORAS. So to perform the verification, we need OCR artifacts and we need some place to store it. That's why we have a store bind with the verifier, but it's like a temporary store. And for the OCI store cache on bottom, it's for the cache purpose to save time from always do the ORAS fetch into the memory-based store.
I see. So it's because the OCI store, OCI store might not be able to finish writing the blobs to it. So you want to store it temporarily in memory. And then is there some sort of queue or something that's going to trigger the cache worker to eventually populate the underlying OCI store? Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. And by using the memory-based store in the first place can efficiently avoid the race condition issue we have previously.
So how do you reconcile what's in the OCI store versus in the memory store? Because the OCI store is backed by the index file, which is actually what's causing the issues. You could have another plugin process that's already racing and has updated the index file, the OCI store index file directly. And it could be that the OCI store for that particular process is now out of date from what's stored in memory. How do you rectify that?
Mm, So you're saying that the cache should be renewed if
I guess okay, so I guess I'm just trying to think through it as well. I guess from a if we step back a bit, the initial problem was that because there are multiple plugins verifiers, each of them are independent processes, and so when the plugin is invoked, it actually creates a brand new Aura store instance per process. And so it needs to basically create, it needs to have access to the underlying OCI blob store so that it's not constantly, refetching that same information.
yeah.
But because the OCI store might have been overridden by another process, that would cause problems. So I'm trying to understand like how are we right locking the actual index file, which is having the issue here?
I see. So on that point, a memory-based store do not write into that index file. It's just like memory-based and immediately get the content, immediately get the OCI artifact and return to the request of manifest or blob content. And with only one like process working on writing into the underlying OCI store cache, we can avoid the race condition. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, so I do understand how the memory store would be helpful for within a particular process, but I'm trying to understand that between processes, each process is still going to eventually write the content into the OCI store, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you avoid conflicts between the different processes trying to write to the OCI store eventually?
Oh, so I can maintain an available map to see if the uh, content is already inside the OCI store cache. And if that can be a redundancy, but that will not affect our performing verification, right? Just
Junchan, there are
yeah,
some descriptions around the read lock for avoiding dirty content. Could you scroll to that section?
yeah, sure. 1 second. Maybe we'll get back to that question later. Oh,
I was just wondering, like, there's some locks that's mentioned on the worker. Does it help with writing the index file? Yeah, Jincheng, if you switch to the preview.
okay, sure. Yeah, following
Yeah,
description.
so yeah, this section here, where I'm seeing there's two proposed locks for writing content. Akash, do you think this is related to, this is reading content to the cache, but your question is how do we flush out the cache and write it to the index file? Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the first question. And then the second question is how do you actually like what is the atomic how are we going to guarantee atomicity with writing to the index file? Like typically you would have like a file that you would, update with busy or not, and then that could be kind of like your locking mechanism to check if you can write to the actual index file or not. So I'm trying to understand like what is the mechanism we're thinking that we're going to use here to do that? Yeah.
So simply just we previously the reason we have our issue is we have multi process writing into the index at the same time. And for now, since OCI store is since its ORAS itself is thread safe, we only allow one process doing like a concurrency write to the OCI store.
Yeah, so that's yeah, so I understand that's the goal. I'm just trying to understand like how are we gonna actually like what is the mechanism we're gonna use to achieve that?
Implement.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions, Akash?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Shiwei can also jump in here. When we were talking about this originally, I think the recommendation was that on the Ratify side, we implement some sort of like a busy file, like a separate file next to it that you would update. So you'd write to the file, and then there's a way to actually check if the file is currently being written to. And then you would basically say, okay, it's busy. And then every time you try to go write to the file, the first thing you try to do is check and read from that file to see is it busy or not. And if it isn't, it's kind of like you're trying to grab the lock equivalently, but file-based. I don't know the specifics on how, I haven't looked into the specifics on how you would do it, but I think there's a common way that process locking, the recommended way to do that. So yeah, so I think are we also gonna basically implement that in this approach?
Showing. Oh, let me have another try to explain what's going on this side. Like, we will have the queue maintaining the task to write into our OCI cache, OCI store cache, right? So, the previous task was like handled by module process, which will cause uh the like the dirty write into the index.json. But after the transform, we have all the tasks, write tasks in our queue. So there will only be one progress handling all these tasks.
Write to the, so there's only going to be one process writing to the index file.
I see.
Right.
Okay, so the main Ratify process will have the cache worker that will actually handle all of the updates to the OCI store. So it's not each
Exactly.
process will, right? Got it. Okay. And so how does maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Please continue. I'll follow up with questions later. I don't want to take over here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jinchen, feel free to go through the component updates.
sure. So we don't have much. Yeah. So component description, including some like details about how each component works, like the OCI store, aka the local cache. It's just previously it used the create stores from config to generate a new OCI store. And for now, we'll have a separate store type. It can be generated with other building stores to hold our OCI store cache, but running on separate process as we mentioned. Our cache worker, we have two types of store workers. The first one is the upper one, verify store worker. It handles all the operations to get the OCI artifacts and send the task to our planning queue to handle these downloading caching works. And the second is our cache store worker. It handles tasks from the queue and holds all the local OCI store to help with the cache check, like right here. Just close this one. So like this one, cache hit. We'll try to check from this OCI store cache. And here is an interface designed for our cache worker. The key functions are these two: get blob content and get reference manifest. And then for sure we have our enqueue and dequeue tasks. And after talking about the current design, we have some alternative considerations and comparisons. I have comparing the async caching and sync caching. For using async caching, because we have queue which is very helpful to efficient task handling, and it's scalable. For when we have more verifiers, we only have to maintain one queue and one OSCI store. The next part is one store for all verifiers versus one store per verifier. When we go to when we have one store for all verifiers, the system is as showing pretty simple. We don't have to manage all quite a lot of stores, so including syncing and any communication in between. By the way, it's also easy for monitoring and getting insights, seeing the status of store. It's also be able to horizontally scale with including the number of verifiers. And when it comes to using one store per verifier, as mentioned, the syncing between those OSS stores can cause increased design difficulty.
Yuncheng,
And yeah,
I have a question.
yeah, please go ahead.
So I know that in some scenarios, like I know, for instance, like Gatekeeper constrains our verify response to 5 seconds or something like that, or 7 seconds. Now that we're introducing a queue where we could potentially increase the wait time for some of these requests to go through, is there any concern that we may see an increased timeout failure for some of, like for instance, in the Gatekeeper scenario?
I may take a look at the Gatekeeper in the Gatekeeper scenario in the first place, but like the cache, the way we handle cache or we get cache will not increase any further latency for now. So as we do previously, we just try to get the cache from the local registry, and we still have the local registry, I mean the OSS store holding the cache. So the process is unchanged, which will not, from my point, will not change the current latency. Well, the only concern will be if the cache is saved to OCI store in time.
I guess, Luis, we don't have a metric on how many verifications on how many verifiers we commit to for the second constraint
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would be, I don't know, like probably an edge scenario where you have like multiple verifiers. But I mean, still good worth noting, sort of like if we kind of get into this scenario, like what's the latency that we could potentially add? But seems like it's not a concern for now.
Yeah, Junchen, if you like to measure the latency, so we have the image where there is a SBOM vulnerability report, cosine signature and notation. There's like a like test tag all. So you might want to compare the before and after performance
Sure.
for this change.
And do the performance check. can refer to the previous one done by Akash and get some status. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
So,
will spend more time offline to review this PR. But anything high level, Akash?
I think yeah, I need to spend a little bit more time. I gave it a glance over before this as well, but I think once the new changes you said you've added, I'll go over that as well. I still have some questions on how, if we were to implement this via a centralized cache worker in the main Ratify process, how we would maintain state or queue between the different processes, and how those processes would be able to kind of interact with some sort of centralized queue. So that's one question, because I think an in-memory queue wouldn't really work for our scenario.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the second one I have is I'm still a little bit unsure on how when you write to the OCI store,
Mhm.
and you're a new process that's been spawned because you're an external verifier, your in-memory store will not be populated, which is expected. So that means you need to read from the OCI store. So how does that work when you have, you know, it's basically a dirty read? How are we blocking on that? And then how long, I think this ties back into the performance test we may have to do. How long would the process be waiting to actually read from store? And then, or is it gonna just, if it waits too long, is it gonna go upstream and now, ask the registry for the same redundant information? So I think those are more like specific details, but the larger question I have is how are we gonna be able to communicate between the processes if we need to have a centralized cache worker? So
Sure.
I'll comment also on the PR so that we can start a discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Juncheng, for running through the design. Thanks for the feedback, Akash.
Thanks, Juncheng.
Feedback.
Okay, I'll
I
have a
can
look.
transfer the ownership back to Sophie. Is that stop sharing first?
Sure. Okay, I can take control back, Juncheng.
Cool. I was still looking for the button.
Yeah, no problem. The next on the agenda is breaking down 1321. Yi, would you like to talk about this, the goal for this issue?
Yes, I added this agenda item. So for this error message improvements, it was planned for our next release. And what I want to discuss today is try to have a brainstorming on how we can start working on this issue. Because there are different scenarios as I listed in this issue. So I just want to hear opinions or comments on how we can break down this issue so that we can address this error messages separately. Of course, we can reference some guidelines on how to improve the error messages. But before that, we needed to know what is the current status and how many error messages or areas that we needed to focus on. And so I just want to hear some opinions because as I listed in the issue, I can foresee there are different areas. So I'm not sure if one, for example, if one person working on this issue, it could cause a long lead time to identify all the error messages that we needed to improve. So I just want to hear opinions or ideas. And previously, if you remember that we did some negative testing, right? At that time, we listed some criteria and the people can chime in to choose areas they can start to do some hands-on. So I'm not sure whether for error message we can do the similar practice.
From previous bug bash, do we already have the current state that, like, we previously did negative testing? Do we already have the error messages as of today?
But that negative testing is not focusing on error message. I think it's just focusing on
Okay.
the negative test cases. Maybe in some cases it covers some error message, but that is not the purpose for identify the error messages.
Got it. So Binbin, you may have started working on this item. Do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I feel this issue covers a few areas. So first one is that we should cover, like, we need to consider the error message for different scenarios, like so scenarios listed in this issue. And another area is that what kind of error message we should return for each scenario. Like previously, for example, we have like a referrals not found, and it turns out that it's not clear to our customers, and then we made some like updates to that error message, but it's still not very very clear to like users. So I think we might need to consider like other messages or other information to provide. And also I feel like we also need to maybe for the currently we have some like nested error, and now I'm also considering maybe we don't need those like nested errors, because it would be not like intuitive to debug the actual like root cause.
Yeah, Binbin, would you be able to comment on this issue and create the initial categories?
Yes, but before that, I feel for the scenarios we want to cover, I feel we have two ways. One is that we like go through every user scenario and like list the expected error message for each one. And another approach is that we go through our code path and check, and like we check everywhere that like returns error, and we do some like analysis.
Yep. So E's list here, E, is that the most important scenarios that we should focus on?
Yeah,
Or these are
actually,
just examples?
yes, I try to list the areas I think it's important at that time. So you can see it's mainly related to signature verification. And these are also some are scenarios, some are scenarios under scenarios. So actually, what I want to discuss today is that as Bingbing just suggested, one way is that we can work on different scenarios. We just identify the scenarios and we do the test, and we collect the error messages for that test. Another way is review the code and find all the places that produce error messages. So these are the two two options. So when I wrote this issue, I prefer that we can work as a user and try different scenarios and collect the current error messages. Then with all those error messages collected, then we can discuss how to fix it. So we have some good reference from, for example, from Aura's community. We can follow the error message guideline, maybe from Aura's community, then think about how to improve it. But before we take action to do the improvements, we needed to know what has a problem. So just now, Bingbing and I think we have two options now. One is to test the different scenarios. Then we just list all the scenarios. So the what I list may not be the complete list. We can, if we want to choose this way, then we needed to first identify all the scenarios that we needed to work on. Another option, as Bingbing said, to review the code. I'm not sure whether this is doable or it can have a good effect in the end, because what you see in the code, in the end, you still need to verify it from the user, right? But code review may help with the nested error messages that Bingbing just talked about. Yeah, so I think feel free to share any ideas on how we can work on this.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that coming from the user perspective is more efficient so that we can focus on the most important scenarios that the majority of the errors are coming from. Like scanning through the code, there is a lot of error handling. It may not be the best way or not
Yeah,
like the most efficient way for the customer.
Yeah, so yes, that's the purpose for this topic. So let's have a brainstorming to figure out what's the best way to do that. I would like to hear any comments from other participants in this meeting.
Yeah, sure. Louise, Akash.
So I think I agree with Binbin about the whole nesting errors. I think we should probably look into standardizing that and making sure that we're returning only one error code. But I think a side question with that whole nesting is that we get a level of traceability that you can kind of in the code itself if you want to trace through the code. But I don't know if we're able to at every single, I guess, root error level, which is, or sorry, every leaf error level, so all the way down where the actual error is thrown, able to generate unique error codes for each one of those, then maybe it's not necessary to actually have the nesting because you can always trace where the error came from, just a quick search in the code. So that's one approach to doing it. The other approach is we would maybe introduce another error field in the type. So here's like a more human readable message, and that'll be more centered around like what user scenario maybe have led to this error, and then maybe possibly even recommending a remediation step in that message as well. So that's another option, or the option is we don't do any sort of error tracing or returning any of that technical detail related to Ratify, and we only return the user scenario error. That one becomes a little bit tougher because how debugging exactly what went wrong might become more challenging. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
We also have the debug mode, right, Akash? Like, can we if we're in debug mode, the nesting or the error messages from all the levels may be beneficial for tracing.
Yeah, that's.
I feel the debug mode probably just for the developers. for the most customers, they will not enable debug.
Yeah, that's super true because by the time, let's say they come to us, right, they're gonna have just the human readable error message and
Yep.
be like, look, this is the issue. And it may or may not repro, and then we're dealing with, okay, how do we enable debug logs for them, explain to them that they need to do this, and it becomes a lot more challenging to do that. So I think the more feasible way is if we can somehow embed like a unique identifier for every single piece of error that we return so we can trace
Yep.
it back to exactly where it was thrown. That's kind of the end goal.
Yeah.
But
But that's two requirements because where we want to see information that the customer don't understand, but only we understand for tracing purpose, but
mhm.
pollutes their message because they won't understand what that means, right?
Yeah, so then the idea is that you want to be as least disruptive as possible, right?
Yep.
So you generate like a UUID or something like that, which we would understand. They would not understand. But and they would, if the message is not helpful, then they return to us and be like, look, this is the message we're getting. We followed the advice, the human readable part of it, but there's also this thing that might help you debug further.
Yep.
So maybe that's another option.
Yeah, I think for breaking down this issue, like
Mhm.
literally we can create sub issues and assign it to different people because it could be too big right now for a single person to investigate. Especially we're looking at 1.3 targeting end of August. Is that right? We have 2 months.
Yeah.
So I think we need to start breaking this down into subtask at least.
And Binbin, I'm happy to like help out here as well. We can collaborate on this too. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so maybe yeah, I'm thinking that for this issue, it's focusing on the signature verification, but definitely there are some other I mean other related error messages for this. But of course, from user point of view, they just want to verify the images, right? So currently, the many they mainly do it by the signature, but in the future there could be other attestations. And currently we also have a spawn and the vulnerability. They are not signature verification, but I think we may also considering a common way for those different type of artifact verification as well. But we can put those as maybe a bit low priority comparing to signature verification. But we will seek for the common solution for different type of artifacts.
Yeah, so I think can you add to the list of scenarios? And once we have those customer scenarios that we should focus on, then we'll break it into subtasks. Like for example, the user doesn't have the assigned roles to access Azure resources like the registry and AKV. That could be one category because they're not related to verification of the signature. So we can break it down that way.
So you mean I can categorize different errors like what I listed in the issue, but I categorize them.
Oh, I think we should categorize them because the devs, we have more context on like, this is an RS issue. This is a auth provider issue. This is, we can categorize it, but we want the list of customer scenarios we should focus on. So is this list in front of us, is this the complete or are there more we should focus on?
Yeah, that's also what I'm asking here is that I think we can all contributing to the different scenarios or customer cases. what I list may not be the fullest. So
I
I
see.
think we can leverage the community to come up with a complete list. And the items I list here can be a starting point. Do you
Oh,
think
got it.
how we can collaborate on that? Should we have another Kanban file, or we put
Yeah,
it
if you could, like, just like the design doc, we could start a document there, and then we could just comment with all the scenarios that we want to add.
So you mean the PRs in the doc? Do we have a directory? So this is kind of a proposal for testing, right? Or
well, the goal for the first activity is to come up with all the customer scenarios that needs error message improvement, right?
yeah, we can put it under this directory discussion. I saw negative test cases for Ratify. Yeah, we can create a PR. I list all the cases or scenarios that at the start, and you can comment if anything is missing.
Exactly, yeah. And each of us can review, and then we can finalize on the agreed list.
Okay, that's a good proposal. Okay, I think once we done that, then we can think about how we can improve it, right? So some error message could be nested, and as Akash just talked about, some solution like arrow field, arrow code, or something else, we can discuss how to improve them. But before that, let's first collect all the error messages that currently we have.
Yeah. Bin, you have your hand up.
Oh yes, I remember we did a bug batch before on the human scenarios. I feel we can reference that doc
Yeah.
to
Is
save a
this
lot of time.
one? Is this the negative test case for Ratify?
Yeah, we can click into. Yeah, probably this one.
Yeah. I can scroll to the negative test cases. Okay, I'm going to just search for. Oh, sorry. All of these are negative test cases. Yes.
Yeah.
So the list is here, right here.
Yeah, so yeah, I can take this list as a reference. Maybe especially for the category, right? And at least the description. But what I would like to do is in some cases, I would like to act as a user, because in some cases it may involve different category, right? So, for example, if we focus for one category, we may missing the goal of the user. Actually, they want to achieve something, but they stopped at the first phase. It could be. I will consider that. So make it more from user point of view.
Yeah. And we also have to think about the priority. Like we'll try to, like in wave 1 of improvement, we want to address the common ones that the customer will run into.
Yeah. I think wave 1 is a good term.
Yeah.
Wave 1. Yeah, wave 1, I think wave 1, in general, I want to focus on signature verification. That is the most cases that currently our users are focusing on. So it will be signature verification, but it will definitely involve, for example, authentication to different store, right? Something like that. Yeah. So I will create a PR with a proposal of a category and scenarios, and also the parties.
Yeah. Thanks, E. Checking our agenda.
I have
Go
one more
ahead,
question.
Bin.
Yeah, I have one more question on the error stuff. So I'm considering the case that the root cause is coming from like the dependency library, like notation Go, Aorus Go, or even cosine library. So in this case, like Ratify can only like return this error directly, or otherwise because otherwise we need to analyze each error and return something different. But I feel it would take. It's not maintainable on the Ratify side.
Yeah, I think this is also a good point. So you just you mentioned the nested messages. I think this is a one good point. Another is error log from the dependencies, right? So we needed to address this, how to handle it. And I think before that, we can currently be focusing on the areas that we want to test, and we collect the error message, and we see what is the current status. Then later we can figure out a good way to improve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think nested messages and dependency messages are the two good points as we have this brainstorming. Thanks, Bing.
Cool. So we have 4 minutes. I want to check with Josh that are there any open questions from the periodic fetch that we haven't agreed on? Josh, are you blocked in any way?
No, I met with Akash earlier today. I was able to get, and I can bring once probably next week I'll have some more solid things to talk about. But unblocked currently, I did find a pretty simple way to get the periodic refresh to go on the reconcile method. And so now I met with him, and I'll be working on trying to create some kind of interface that will sit in between the reconcile trigger for the for a general term, and then the providers themselves. So next week I should have more solid stuff to talk on, but not blocked currently.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Akash. Yep. Does anyone have any other topics? Cool. Thanks for joining, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Good to see you as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.